Well, it was interesting because that phrase by Thoreau, "we need the tonic of wildness," became incredibly pertinent right after 9/11 to us. So I read about this phrase that he had written through somebody at the National Science Foundation, and there was a whole body of work about that leaders used forays into natural places at times of tremendous stress. So Roosevelt would go to Yellowstone when he was dealing with complex decision-making. Yosemite was created as a national park during the Civil War by Lincoln.
During the Civil War?
During the Civil War. So, and here we were traumatized by this event.
Yeah.
And I felt that we could communicate to people that one of the things that could help us heal, help us get through this, was an exposure to nature and wildness. So it became a calling, a clarion calling for the entire enterprise. And in fact, I believe in my heart of hearts that single phrase saved our enterprise at that particular time.
Amazing. Well, there was so much stress. There was so much going on. We were going into war. I definitely think that that's such a truism that, going into nature really helps you get grounded. I think it's probably a fact with therapists. People know, you need to get grounded. You need to see the natural wild. That's why one of the reasons it's so important to protect.
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy called Richard Louv. He wrote a book called Last Child in the Woods. I don't know if you've ever seen that, and he coined a phrase, and he's a scientist, so he's done a lot of work on this, which is nature deficit disorder. And he's talking about this disconnect that young people have from nature and its effects, and they're far-reaching cognitive effects, all kinds of psychosis. And, when you think about young people today and what they're thinking about in relationship to their futures, the climate change and their sort of parsing of it or trying to understand it and how it's going to have an effect on their futures is causing tremendous stress. And there's a lot of scientific work behind that. And there's no question that if we just do not take seriously that we need to be in balance with our natural systems, that there's going to be a huge price to pay on a multitude of levels.
I think that with travel, what you're doing is you're opening your eyes up to see what our planet is like on the whole. So for me, when I started seeing that there were these different places, you could physically go to these different places on the planet and see a completely different world, it just made me understand how I fit into my own world and also the type of person that I wanted to be, which is a person that wanted to push out into the world and to see things, to explore, to discover.
So here's another quote. Yeah. You'll love this one. It's absolutely probably my favorite quote of all, by Alexander von Humboldt. Not a lot of Americans know who he was, but he was a great, great, great explorer, naturalist, geographer. And one of his quotes was, "The most dangerous worldview is held by those who have not viewed the world."
Yes.
So you've always had this, and you've been very influenced by your father, right, who also was an explorer. Do you want to talk a little bit about how he influenced your life? Because he was a mentor for you.
Yeah, so Lars Erik Lindblad, my father, he came to the United States in 1951, and he really wanted to be an explorer above all else. In fact, I'm named after Sven Hedin, who was he idolized, which was a Swedish explorer. But he couldn't amass the money it took to be a traditional explorer, because in those days you either had to be rich or you had to have a sponsor, so he couldn't figure that out. And then he thought about becoming a missionary, but he wasn't religious, so that was a problem.
One small problem.
One small problem. But he did meet people like Albert Schweitzer and people like that in his younger ages, when he was younger. And then he decided that, well, maybe I can accomplish this through developing a travel business. So he was never interested in a travel business per se, but he was interested in it. Was number 3 on the short list of opportunities to explore, right? Can't be an explorer, not going to be a missionary, so I'll start a travel business. Anyway, so he basically opened up the world places like Antarctica, the Arctic, Mongolia, Easter Island. He and the King of Bhutan developed a protocol for tourism in Bhutan where none had existed before. He was the first American asked in to develop tourism in China.
Wow.
Amazing. And on Easter Island, didn't he help erect those
statues?
Yeah,
he erected it. Well, he worked with archaeologists there, and he put up a tented camp, and he flew people over with Chilean military aircraft.
Wow.
So he had more guts than probably anybody I've ever met.
To put those back up, right? Because they were somewhere on the ground. And
absolutely.
And made it a real tourist destination. Right?
Well, it was a limited tourist destination because you had to fly a military aircraft and then you had to stay. So he was the only one allowed there for a while.
Wow. So he was the first one to bring people there.
Yeah, and he pretty much had the attitude that when people said it's impossible, he would laugh and say, no, it's not. He actually literally would laugh when people said things were impossible. And he would say,
fabulous.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. He found the word impossible to be a ridiculous word.
I love that.
Well,
magnificent fellow.
And you must have, I'm sure, internalized a lot of that impossible ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Well, I thought this was interesting. Your father has a cove named after him in Antarctica, Lindblad Cove, right?
Yeah.
And you went to visit that. And now, not to be outdone, you also have something named after you in honor of your conservation efforts in the Galapagos. I believe it's a moth. Am I right?
It's a moth.
So you either get a cove or a moth.
It's a 5-mile cove or a moth.
Well, can I say it?
It's a really small moth.
Undulambia lindbladi.
Yeah.
Say that 5 times
Still
fast.
is cool. I
think by the way, so Dr. Tom from the Heart of Nuba was on our show, and he got a stamp.
Yes,
right?
he has a stamp
Yeah.
in Armenia.
You got
he's on a stamp. Yeah,
and he deserves. But I have to tell you about that cove because the first time I went through that cove, I went Katrina with your husband and another fellow called Phil from Santa Monica.
Ken Carlson.
Yeah, but he deserves to have he deserves to have something named after him. I'm sure he will by the time he in the next 2 or 3 years, or maybe 2 or 3 months. But we had so much fun there. We went out chasing icebergs in the
we saw the picture
in the descending light, and it was so funny because I just was not dressed for the occasion. We were just so spontaneous. We said, we got to get off the ship. We got to go out and we got to see those icebergs before the sun goes down.
In the cove, in Lindblad Cove.
It was such a beautiful evening.
So we have a question for you both. What can we do then? What can our audience do? What can we be doing in light of the evidence, in light of what's happening? And it's not everybody can do grand gestures. Are there gestures we can take every day? Or what can we be doing to
be better global citizens, to be better stewards of our environment, and some takeaways.
Well, that by the way is a critical question because these forces are so substantial that a lot of people feel hopelessness, and hopelessness is not what you want people to feel. And people can in fact do things. People can do big things and smaller things, but they all add up. There's an organization that we're very connected with. I'm on the board of, called RARE, and RARE is coming up with a really focused campaign called Make It Personal. And what they've done is they've done a lot of study around the fact that there are a few behavioral changes that you can make that if 10% of the American population, just isolating the American population for the moment, would undertake, and they're not draconian either, that would make up the difference between where we are supposed to be in 2030 if we followed the guidelines of the Paris Climate Accord, and the deficit that we will have as a consequence of not following it.
That's exciting.
So that individuals can do that. Like, for example, eat meat one less time a week.
Great.
Make your next car an electric car. Fly one less time a year. Get excited about a broader plant-based diet. So these are not things like you're going to have to sacrifice massively to do, right?
Right.
Offset your life. So, for example, the average American, if you want to offset your life, do you know?
I don't know what that means.
So offsetting is basically, it's basically creating investments in activities that either sequester carbon, eliminate carbon, or basically deal with carbon in a variety of ways, like the creation of wind farms, solar projects,
planting trees.
Right.
Cook stove, the cook stoves example.
Different kinds of cook stoves that are less intensive using wood. And these are all enterprises that would not exist were it not for these external investments. So there are a few organizations that sort of catalyze these investments.
Okay.
So, for example, our company offsets everything. Our ships, our offices, our employee travel, et cetera, et cetera. So we are, quote unquote, a carbon neutral company. Right?
That's amazing.
So, but you can do that as an individual. And the people are very, very surprised. The average American to offset their existence is $11 a month.
Really?
Basically the price of a cocktail.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or actually a cocktail in Minnesota, not in New York or LA.
Right. Definitely
So,
not here.
Are there companies that are going to let us understand how we can do that?
Yes.
So is that what you're saying?
on that website?
That's going to be on that website.
That's going to be part of it.
Okay.
And there's a really cool app. It's being beta tested right now. But so you can do these things, and not only will you feel good about them, but in aggregate, we all as individuals, can make a big
So
difference.
powerful.
I love
That's right. When we get
that.
together and do the same thing.
And like you said, it can seem like such an insurmountable mountain, but when you can break it down into bite-sized chunks and recognize that you're making a huge difference.
Right. And so those watching on our YouTube channel, we're going to play a video featuring Kristen's underwater photography to the song Breathe Underwater for their viewing pleasure.
Right. So we just want to thank you both,
so
much for being here and sharing your experiences and your stories with us.
We're
really appreciate
so
it.
happy to be
I would
here.
say you are crazy, amazing
You
humans.
guys, thanks for being
that's
crazy, amazing humans in the
Thank you.
environmental arena and so many more.
Right.
Thank you.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this clip. Be sure to watch the full episode by clicking the link in the description.
Right. And don't forget to like this video and then subscribe to our channel. Oh, and click on the bell icon so we can let you know when we post a new video.
Thanks guys. Take care.
See you next time.